This whole thing was a takedown attempt at the President of the United States. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves for the way you reported so dishonestly.
A diatribe on honesty from President Trump that came, of course, as Trump himself was uttering a litany of false and misleading claims. We don't have time to revisit all of the lies and distortions he delivered during his Rose Garden meltdown, but we can run through our own top 5. First, on transparency.
And I think most of you would agree to this. I'm the most transparent president probably in the history of this country.
The truth? Trump himself refused to sit for an interview with Robert Mueller. He's also actively, right now, refusing to cooperate with congressional investigations. And he's the only president in decades not to hand over his tax returns. Not to mention that he's all but eliminated the White House press briefing. Another statement from the president this morning that didn't quite ring true to us has to do with Russia.
I don't speak to Russians about campaigns. When I went to Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, I don't say, oh, let's call Russia. Maybe they can. It's a hoax.
The truth? Not only does the Mueller report reveal at least 140 contacts between members of the Trump campaign and Russians, there was also this gem of an overture.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
And another blatant lie this morning, Trump claiming that he respects the rule of law.
I respect the courts. I respect Congress. I respect right here where we're standing.
Respect. This whole Rose Garden tantrum was an announcement that Trump will no longer be working with congressional Democrats on anything, including their oversight responsibilities. And as for the courts, remember the dozens of attacks on federal judges when their rulings didn't go Trump's way. And finally, what might be the lie to end all lies.
I don't do cover-ups. You people know that probably better than anybody.
You've been indicted, basically, for one. This is the president whose signature is on checks to Michael Cohen, who paid hush money to a porn star. The table's back. Chuck, I need your calming. I mean, your blood boils listening, and each one more audacious than the one before it.
Yeah, he does, as we said earlier, he does do cover-ups, just not particularly well. You know, here's the interesting thing to me, Nicole. The president, remember the Access Hollywood tape? Not that I want to conjure up that, really. But he later said that wasn't his voice.
Yeah.
Or it may not be his voice, or maybe it wasn't his voice. I mean, he can literally take up and say it's down. He can literally take white and say it's black. When he says that the report, that the Mueller report showed no collusion, no wrongdoing, it's all a hoax, it's all a witch hunt, that's only if you don't read it. Because if you read it, it's exactly the opposite.
Right.
And so I don't know that I'm going to say anything right now that's going to make you feel much better. But it's deeply disturbing to see this juxtaposition of falsehood and fact. The president can't keep it straight. It has to just be what? Right? An attempt to cover up.
It is so central to who he is as president. It is as Chuck said, during the campaign, I think even before the election, it got out that even though he was forced essentially to deliver a hostage tape style apology for the things said on the Access Hollywood tape, he was very attracted to conspiracy theories that maybe that wasn't me. This again, and when we relied, thank you, on some of your great reporting and analysis right after that briefing, this is a president who will stand there before God and country and lie his bleep off.
I think it's really interesting that he is directly refuting the cover-up language that Nancy Pelosi has used. If there's one thing that the president has been good at as far as his messaging is, he picks a phrase, a very simple phrase, and he uses it over and over and over again. And I feel like the use of cover-up by Nancy Pelosi is that kind of a phrase that could really stick and kind of drive home the point that Democrats are making. But this is also a president who, his entire kind of political ethos is he says something one day and then he might say something completely at odds the other day. But he says something that is going to allow his supporters to believe what they want to about what happened. He's going to say the other thing that is going to make him get some plausible deniability about the whole thing. And I think that's what this whole press conference was about. By saying I don't do cover-ups, he's trying to just plant that seed and combat that talking point that we're seeing from Nancy Pelosi.
I totally agree. And I think it was deeper than that. I think cover-up is actually the attack on Donald Trump that has a benefit, one, of being true, two, of crossing over from everything Mueller looked at to what we already know Trump is guilty of, being an unindicted co-conspirator in the Southern District of New York, covering up sex with a porn star, where if you can't understand sort of the intricacy of looking the other way when Russia shared a goal electorally with the Trump campaign in 2016, everybody understands giving money to someone you had sex with to keep it from being an embarrassment to your family, which is Rudy's most generous explanation of what went on there. This smear of blaming the media, putting up this poster board about the stats on the Mueller campaign, this all feels like she has really hit him, not just where it embarrasses him, but where he thinks it could be politically damaging to him.
Yeah, but he's always been driven by grievance and by the sense that he's under attack, and he responds to every attack by saying, look at them, they're out to get me. He said today, they're out to get me. All of the Democrats are out to get me.
And all of us.
Well, that's right. It's either the media or the Democrats. The Mueller report, don't like the findings. They're out to get me. It's obviously politically motivated. Oh, that tape of me telling Russia to discover the emails? I was joking. I mean, he's got an explanation for everything. And I think Chuck makes a good point about the, saying that white is black. He is shameless about doing this in a way that we have never seen from a president, probably too many politicians throughout American history. The way today he sprinkles his delivery, his remarks with, well, you understand, you agree with this, you know this. He's talking to the press. The press can't respond. He's just delivering a monologue. And yet he is giving the impression that there's wide agreement in the crowd, in the media, broadly speaking, that what he's saying is the truth, because he knows that the only person on camera is him saying that. And so he's trying to deliver that impression. It's another thing we might refer to as a tell that actually the opposite is true.
Yeah.
But that's how he's always responded to these situations, just believing that he can talk his way out of it and say that, you know what, if I'm up against it, it's because people are out to get me. It's because of motives, unpure motives on their side. It's not that investigators are following the facts, et cetera. So the media is pursuing the truth. It can never be that. It has to be they're out to get me.
I think so much of going up against him is sort of the same way you manage, a teenager or petulance, because the behavior, the conduct is petulance. Nancy Pelosi seems to be the perfect Democratic leader for a politician like that. But what has been operationalized? Take me inside how Democrats have sort of recalibrated to go up against someone who does what everyone's saying, who says up is down, black is white, yes is no, in is out, Russia is not right. I mean, how have the Democrats adjusted to sort of the asymmetry of being toe-to-toe with a politician who lies about everything?
Well, I don't know that Democrats have fully adjusted to that. I think it's been very difficult because when you deal in a world of facts, it is complicated to deal with somebody who doesn't enjoy facts at all. But here's the thing. I think that Nancy Pelosi's use of the term cover-up was very intentional today, and also because I think she wants to draw a line between what happened with Richard Nixon, that we all understood to be about a cover-up, and what's going on now with the President of the United States. And it's important to draw that link because then it puts you on a pathway to try to deal with accountability. I also think Pelosi is a grandmother. And there's something that you know about being a grandmother that helps you deal with this kind of childish petulance. So I think that helps as well. And it can keep the...
Do you agree that that's what the Democrats have to manage, his petulance?
I think they do. I think they do. And I mean, I think that they have to respond in a way that really is not in kind. The other thing that I would say is that for Democrats, what they're looking at down the line is to hold this president accountable. Yeah. And you can't do it by meeting him with every single blow. Right. But you can do it by using language that then gets him to emote, and that's what he did today.
That's exactly what.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.